Welcome to This Week in Legal Blogging for December 17th, 2020, in which we talk with leading bloggers from across the legal industry. This program is presented by LexBlog, providing lawyers with turnkey digital publishing solutions and strategic consulting for 16 years. You can find out all about everything it does at lexblog.com/products. And a reminder, if you're new to the show, we've been doing this for a while, and we've got a great library of interviews with some really fantastic bloggers and some fantastic conversations with them. And you can find all of those back episodes on YouTube at youtube.com/LexBlog. We are also out there as a podcast, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And today, we are very happy to welcome to the show Edward McNicholas. He is a partner at Ropes & Gray in Washington, D.C., where he's co-leader of the data, privacy, and cybersecurity practice. And he is also an author of the firm's blog, RopesDataPhiles, a blog offering practical data, privacy, and cybersecurity tips. Ed, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Good to talk to you. And I like the kind of play on words or double meaning of the name of the blog, because it's Data Files, Philes, not Files.
We love our data. We love our data. Indeed. I do wonder sometimes whether how much traffic we send over to Data Files with an F, but we'll do anything for a good pun. And
well, I'm sure you love your data if you're devoting your career to doing it. But just before we start talking about your blog, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice. What do you do?
So, not surprisingly, I work in privacy and cybersecurity, which I think 10 years from now will be referred to as data law, and we're trying to move the term that way. Some people think it might be information law. I think data law is catchier. It's an area that has been evolving, but I grew up as a litigator. I got out of law school in 1996, and so internet law was not really a big thing at that point. And started writing appellate briefs, litigating cases. I worked in the Clinton White House. Worked as on the White House counsel's defense team in an investigation involving an intern that got some media. And then after that,
you might have to refresh our recollections.
Yeah, I do not need to. There's enough on the internet about that.
Okay.
There is, but then I still had active clearance, and so there is a network engineer suggested that there might be some relationship between AT&T and the NSA, and they filed a lawsuit from the Electronic Frontier Foundation out in San Francisco, and we had was part of the team representing AT&T in these NSA wiretapping cases, which was a very interesting set of cases. It really got into privacy and data, and then worked on any number of large data breach cases involving Neiman Marcus, Michaels, Yahoo, had worked on many of the largest data breaches out there. Along the way, really going deep into data and becoming somewhat, I had a transformative moment. And when I looked at it and said, people are thinking about, in the legal community, we think about data as a liability. Is all about the privacy regulators and the cybersecurity regulators and what can be taken and all the things that can happen and the need to minimize data. And then I was listening to the people on the other side, the clients, saying, no, data is the new oil. It's a source of value. It's an asset, not a liability. And I realized that lawyers, and perhaps it's just to our nature, tend to be so pessimistic. And that we needed some optimism and enthusiasm. In fact, some love. And that's why we're Data Files, because we love data. And we have this sense that data is a source of value. Data is creating new business models. It's doing wonderful things for our clients. And there's lots of very interesting transactions we do. And Ropes has a view of data where a lot of our practice, yes, we do data breach, we do privacy counseling, but we also do a lot of deals in which the data is the value. And so that's the kind of the perspective that I want to bring to this, that data is for good, not just something that might be stolen or regulated.
But it's interesting because it's despite that, despite being a data file in that sense, there's still plenty of bad news that gets reported on your blog. I mean, I'm just looking at recently.
The news, right?
British Airways fined £20 million by ICO for data breach. OFAC issues advisory on ransomware payments. Lots of bad news out there.
Well, it is true that a lot of the scope of regulation here has been trying to reassert privacy rights or to punish companies with respect to data breaches.
Yeah.
It is odd. I mean, data, like the fact that companies are held liable for data breaches is always fascinating to me. If some guys pull up and rob a bank, then the police come. They don't arrest the bank manager for not securing the money better. They go after the criminals. But on data breaches, if someone steals your data, then the Federal Trade Commission shows up and says, well, we're going to fine you some more for not securing the data, as opposed to going after the bad guys. So there's, it is a legal blog. There is some bad news here and there, but we do try to bring our love of data law to the fore.
Yeah, but there does seem to be a sort of a public sentiment that when there is a major data breach against a major corporation or organization, that somehow the corporation is at fault in that, right? I mean, there's a perception of that. Whether it's well, you tell me. I mean, is there anything to that perception? Is it always just the criminal's fault, or are these enterprises at fault sometimes for these breaches?
Well, I guess it always does. It depends. The classic legal answer, right?
Right.
But generally, I think it is. I will sound like really a defense lawyer here, but it is a question of who's going to bear the social costs of data security. And there's a lot of plaintiffs' lawyers who want to make companies into insurance companies for this. That they have. We had we have a case that I was working on a bit ago where hackers came in and they changed the payroll numbers, the check number, the checking account numbers in a payroll, so that the payroll went to the hacker account and not to the right account. And then 2 days later, a woman walks in and says, I've suffered identity theft. No, wait. If they changed the payroll numbers, how did you suffer identity theft? What? It's like saying there was a knife fight and I came in with a shotgun wound. I'm like, what's going on? And I think that there is this effort sometimes where if there is a data breach, then the plaintiff's lawyers go in, they file a case. They're able somehow to do a investigation really fast. They can file like in 2 or 3 days, and they basically say there's a data breach. We're filing a lawsuit, and then the company has to pay. And the consumers often get nothing out of these things. They get some coupons, right. And right. Sometimes we call them pilgrims because they're early settlers, and they just it's just about the attorney's fees, and that's right. Creating an ability for plaintiffs' lawyers to make money does not do anything to advance data security. So,
right. Yeah. I'm curious how your back to your time in the Clinton White House and being involved in helping to manage a particular investigation there. How has that contributed to the work you do now? Has that experience prepared you at all for representing companies in cybersecurity issues?
Yeah, it is. It actually has. It's very relevant. In fact, Monica Lewinsky, of all people, has become really a quite eloquent speaker about privacy, because she was really the first time that the Drudge Report went and picked out a civilian who was really not in the public eye. They had been the Drudge Report. The journalists have been going after politicians forever, and that's fair game. They're in the public eye, but she was not trying to be in the public eye. And they went in and ripped apart everything she did in high school, her friends, her family, her connections, absolutely every last detail. And she's talked about that experience of having your life ripped apart on the internet. Sadly,
Yeah.
that's become a common part of the internet, where someone gets in a news cycle and they're a private figure, and then they get ripped open on the internet for someone's amusement. They wind up in some YouTube clip for 15 seconds, and they have half the world laughing at them. And it's not 15 seconds of fame; it's 15 seconds of shame.
Right.
And it's kind of it's a point where privacy rights do make a lot of sense, and there have to be some limits on this new technology. And watching how even an organization under investigation, like the White House was, how it hurt the society within the social network, because people didn't trust each other as much. And if people, I imagine, like going to college now, there has to be that sense of, well, we're not going to publish videos of each other, right? And that sense of, well, and you're exposing your life to the internet by connecting. And
Yeah.
it did connect up, and it gave me a sense of privacy. And then working after 9/11 on the wiretapping issues gave me a sense of, well, it's important that we use this data, because if we use data correctly, we can save lives.
Yeah.
So how do we balance these things?
Yeah. And I have to assume there's a whole crisis management aspect to representing corporations, at least in the wake of a data breach.
Yes, one would want to be very much aware of the media cycle, the election cycle, whether Congress is in session or not, and the whole political swelter of things.
Yeah. So I'm supposed to be asking you about your blog, which I have yet to do. But maybe you could just start by telling us a little bit more about the blog and what you're trying to do with it, what you're covering there.
So we're trying to cover data privacy and cybersecurity. It is a very much an international blog. We have developments from the U.S., obviously California and the California Consumer Privacy Act, but then there's a very interesting law in Washington, there's a very interesting law in New York, and so we will see, I think, state data breach laws and state personal information laws expand, maybe up until we get a federal law. Maybe we won't get a federal law, maybe we will. There's certainly bills. So there's a lot of coverage there. The Canadians are asking for new powers to be more aggressive, potentially. The Europeans have become much more aggressive over the years. They've had a lot of these. It's very odd. A lot of people think that GDPR is when the European privacy law came. Like, no, they had a lot of those same norms since 1995 in the Data Protection Directive. It's just that they weren't so aggressive on enforcing them. Now they are changing their enforcement. And then China is doing some really interesting things in terms of its privacy laws and cybersecurity laws, and really some of the things that we're seeing out of China are making us think about the nature of the internet and kind of rethinking internet communications in general. And so that is an area of we cover, and we think it's important for people to realize that there's a lot of different cultural perspectives on the internet. Not everyone has like the First Amendment and free speech as the be all end all of the internet.
So with so much going on internationally, with so much going on in the United States, I think there are probably data breach laws in all the states, most of the states. I'm not even sure.
54.
Okay, various privacy laws around the country. How do you decide what you're going to hone in on and focus on in the blog?
Well, we know that there are several excellent news services out there that cover things in a newsy sort of way. There are obviously, and we're not reporters, and we're not going to be as fast often. And when we do know things, oftentimes it's because we know them from a client, and we're certainly not going to be talking about things that involve clients. And so what we try to do is provide perspective to frame events and only cover those events that are important. A lot of the news services, for better or worse, they have the same curse as the 24-hour news stations. They have 24 hours every day, no matter what's going on. And some days, not much is going on. Yeah. Now, 2020, boy, there's been a lot going on. Yeah. So no one's been lacking for news this year. But I think one of the biggest things is that we help clients pick out those spots that are interesting, and then explain to them why we think this is interesting, like why the Chinese privacy law is interesting, and to give them news and insights that can help them think about privacy law and data law in the long run, and not just focused on what's happening today.
So you're acting as a filter in a sense. You're looking for the stories that you think matter to your clients, and then telling them why it matters. Is that fair to say?
Telling why it matters, and also trying to pull out those things that are sometimes they are not played up enough in the media, in the legal media, because it just passes along. For instance, there was a case. There was a TCPA judgment, and it was a $950 or $975, but it was nearly $1 billion fine against a company that will surely put them into bankruptcy if they ever have to pay it. And this was just for marketing.
$925 million, is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, September. I got it in front of me.
You pulled it up. There we go. And that case, I thought, well, geez, that $925 million. Yeah, September 14th, Danielle Bogart's. And that case, that's a death penalty for most companies to lose $925 million. Yeah. And yes, no one likes. I shouldn't say this because my phone will start buzzing or something as I sit here and say, no one likes spam calls or spam texts or something like that. Mm-hmm. But generally, it's not been a death penalty for companies, and it seems like a disproportionate, excessive fine that is beyond where companies would normally reasonably expect to be hit for, maybe not getting the right marketing permissions. So we try to bring those things up to date, and also we try to use it as a way for the associates in the practice and the partners, but also particularly the associates, to get into the area and grow, which is a equally important thing. Like I was mentioning that because Danielle Bogart is an exceptional associate out in California, and it allows her to get out there and get published and get her voice out there in this area, because one of the keys to Ropes and Gray is that we really believe in teamwork and collaboration. And so to do that, we want to have as many people thinking about these issues as possible. So this is a way of bringing together some of our collective intelligence across the firm.
Yeah. So who does write for the blog, and how do you coordinate among those who write for the blog?
We we reach out to there are informal and formal groups that are focused on data privacy and cybersecurity. We have a formal practice, but then we also have an informal, larger tent. We work very much as one firm. It's like Danielle is a litigator. She's not formally part of the data practice, but it's a very interesting piece of litigation. And we try to be open and inclusive in doing this. And this is a way to collect. And so we suggest topics to people. People bring us people bring topics. We have two editors, both of whom are not partners. Fran Fairclough, who's a senior associate, and Kevin Angle, who's a consul. And they do the first cut on things. And then the two partners that lead the group, myself in the U.S., and there's a guy, Rowan Massey, who's in the U.K. We try to avoid taking the credit for any of their work. We let them publish in their names. We do take the phone call if someone missed. We do take responsibility for it, though. We're the ultimate, I guess, editors of it. But we try to have it be something where the associates can feel empowered and be a part of the dialogue.
Yeah, it's got to be great exposure for associates, both externally and within the firm, I would think. Why did you start the blog in the first place, and what were you hoping to do with
it? Mainly hoping to bring this love of data, trying to move some of the dialogue, and it is an area where we're focused on the healthcare market, and we're focused on private equity markets and technology. And these are areas where data is saving lives. It is making fortunes. It is creating new areas of value for companies and consumers. We have people who are, using data to develop vaccines and other good things like that. And we want to make sure that that positive voice is not shut down. For instance, and to give you an example, like under the General Data Protection Regulation, they were not as clear as they could be about data being used for medical research, or particularly like social media data, whether that could be used for medical research. And so some of these issues, happen because we cannot get data used in a responsible way for social good. There have been concerns about this year on contact tracing, a topic that I was never familiar with before this year, but now we have a whole bunch of people who are very concerned about it. For instance, people log into their weather, and weather is a good indication of where you are, because I want to know the weather in Washington, D.C. And sometimes I look at the weather in Boston because I've got friends in Boston, but generally I look at the weather where I am. And so you can use where I am to trace. And this data is used in the advertising space, and it's available in data markets. But people weren't using it for contact tracing. People were afraid to use it because they're afraid of privacy regulations. Yeah. And I think having
until 2020,
and but even early on, people came to us and said, "Hey, we want to use this type of information for contract tracing." I said, "Well, there could be some liability about that. We needed to push some, and we needed to clarify some things in various laws to make that possible." Now, luckily, there's been some movement, and the regulators have been willing to provide people with more latitude. But there's a lot of other research that could happen if there were better protections for the use of data in medical research, or even in development of consumer products, if it's done in a privacy respectful way.
I mean, this year must have raised a host of data privacy issues. Contract tracing being one of them. I'm sure there've been a number of issues around privacy of employee health data. It's how has it changed? How has it affected your practice, your blog this year? What have been the big issues that you've been focusing on this year?
Well, we didn't post as much in this blog as we have a separate COVID resource center,
Oh, okay.
and we did a lot of posting over. It's cross-linked and all that.
Yeah.
But we did some posting over there on privacy issues.
Yeah.
And there were things like no employer had ever asked me, "Can I take my employee's temperature as I walk into the office every day?" No one seemed to care about that.
Right.
But then you find out that, oh, well, not only does it tell you if you have a fever, but it also tells you if there are certain medical conditions that might raise or lower your temperature. For instance, being pregnant. And so then you have, well, woman walks in, has an elevated temperature, pull her aside. Well, you might have COVID. No, I'm actually just pregnant. That's why my temperature is elevated.
Yeah.
Does she need to give a security guard a note? Do we have to make a notation of who's pregnant and who's not? All of a sudden, the privacy issues start leaping off the page.
Right.
With the
and I assume not only are they asking about these things, but they're writing them down somewhere, keeping a record somewhere. They're not writing them down physically, but this is all data that they're accumulating on.
Yes. Well, and do you want to keep all the data to show that you are consciously scanning, or do you want to get rid of it so that there is no way it can be reused? And you can assure people that you take the temperature, you use that information at the time, and then there's no record of it. A more privacy-focused way of getting the same information than having it be in some infrared camera that's scanning people as they're walking in.
Yeah. This is something else that there's been an impression this year that perhaps there have been more data breaches, more ransomware attacks. I mean, I've seen that impression reported in the general media, and I wonder if you're seeing that in your practice, or if it's just that for some reason these things are coming to attention more than they had in the past.
There's been a lot more ransomware, and also the market for ransomware has shifted dramatically. Before a ransomware attack, people would often ask for a couple $100, maybe $1,000, $10,000 to release the servers.
Yeah, in Bitcoin.
We've seen people that has gone up a couple orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
Sometimes more than that, and what people are demanding for ransomware, and that if it's $1,000 to unlock some servers, that comes out of IT's budget, and people move on. If you ask for $10 million, that's a different level of authorization and a different level in the company. You might not call law enforcement over the $1,000 ransom. You're going to call law enforcement over a $10 million ransom.
Right. And one of the articles I was reading on your blog as I was preparing for this was talking about the issue of, companies have to consider the legal implications of whether or not to pay a ransomware. Not only the data implications or the financial implications, but there are legal implications, right?
Well, and that has been something your OFAC, which generally tries to enforce U.S. sanctions by making sure that companies don't do business with terrorist groups and rogue states. Certainly something everyone get behind. We don't want to. No one wants to fund Al Qaeda, but they, as part of the sign of how uncoordinated, discombobulated the cybersecurity policy has been over the past 4 years. That there has been, they issued, much to everyone's surprise, this statement saying that if a company makes payment that goes to a terrorist organization, then they could have OFAC liability for making payments to a terrorist organization. But of course, ransomware payments are, this is the Spectre, I have your data, send the money to this account and you get your data back. the Spectre never says, "Hi, I'm Al Qaeda."
Right.
And they use different accounts all the time, and they're constantly changing. They're really big on not letting you know who they are. And so, in the middle of a data breach, companies are now calling up our sanctions counsel. Luckily, she's right down the hall, so we're okay with that. But I have to walk down the hall and say we need to run these Bitcoin accounts to make sure that they're not used by Al Qaeda. But even if we run them today, and we make sure that there's no indication that today these accounts are used by Al Qaeda or whoever, we don't know we don't know who's actually behind these accounts, because
Right.
they're trying, if we knew who they were, we would have them arrested. We wouldn't pay them money.
Yeah. So coming back to your blog again, when did you start this blog?
We started it, I moved over to Ropes and Gray about year and a half ago now, and we were pulling together. There were a good number of people here, great healthcare privacy team, excellent litigation team, EU privacy team, and we wanted to do this to bring people together across the firm in a common project. And this is one of the ways we've really tried to bring people together and collaborate across the firm, and have people who, I don't care if they're in the healthcare group. If they're interested in data, I want them to be involved in the blog. And if they're doing transactions in the transactional group in London, great. If they're doing something interesting with data, I want them to be sharing that, because our clients don't care about what practice group we're in. They care about the information.
Right.
And so using this blog as a way to bring it together and help build a cohesive group across the firm.
Yeah. Had you been involved in blogging before you got this blog going?
Yes. I was. We started a blog at my old firm, which is still running.
Oh, so for how long have you been blogging in one form or another?
We actually, it was funny. Well, on and off for, I would say, 15 years. There was a group of financial institutions that wanted to pay us to do a blog at my old firm. But then it fell apart, because I said, wait, all this stuff is on for free. Why are we paying you to write this stuff?
Yeah.
And he said, that would have been great to do a blog with a paid subscription of 10 financial institutions. But
yeah,
alas, that business model
no.
is long gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so how would you, given that you've done it before, and given that you started it again when you moved here, how would you assess blogging? How has it impacted your practice? How has it impacted your career? How has it impacted the firms you've been at?
I think it's helpful for visibility, and I also think it's helpful for clients to be a place where they can come and learn about issues. A lot of the cases that we work on are very large, complex matters. And this gives clients, the blog is one of the things that gives clients comfort of, oh, these people know what they're doing, and it's a way of providing comfort and information to clients. And also, yes, we also notice that other law firms read our blog too, and that's fine. It's part of the discussion of legal developments with other lawyers. And although we're supposed to be sharp-elbowed sharks, in fact, there is a good amount of this about that sharing information and sharing perspectives on legal developments. Because at the end of the day, we're all interested in long-run development of the law and the preservation of our liberties.
Yeah, I would think, even especially in the field of data fileism, data, whatever you want to call that. I mean, there would be a lot of collaboration and collegiality among professionals in that area.
It was until 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe at this point, it was a very small bar.
Right.
Of people who've been doing it for a while, and a lot of times we know each other. And often it's also a part of the bar where the technology, the edge of the technology, the edge of academia, and the edge of private practice are arm in arm. Things are constantly growing, constantly changing. I teach at people getting LLMs at GW Law School in their cybersecurity program as a lecturer, and I'm constantly interested in what their backgrounds that are coming in, because they're coming in as practicing attorneys, and I think it's an area where the academic, technological, and legal exchange is particularly robust, and that scholarly dialogue helps all of us.
Yeah. Along the way of blogging, have you identified any kind of what you would consider best practices about how to blog or what not to do in blogging?
Don't write blogs about your clients.
Is that an absolute rule? I mean, not every firm follows that rule.
Yeah,
and certainly not every firm follows it if their client is in the news or has been, in a reported case or something like that. But
our clients have PR. Our clients have PR, public relations, media relations people, and they will handle it themselves.
Yeah.
We are doing this out of interest of the law. We're not trying to get clients by saying, "Oh, we won this motion to dismiss, and we can win your motion to dismiss." Each case is different, and it's not advertising. I know some attorneys go into it as a way of advertising their trial victories or something. That's not our goal.
Right. Okay. Don't write about your clients. Anything else?
Be nice. That's, I think, one of the key things. There's so much anger and vitriol on the internet. I think having a civil tone of exchange and recognizing that people on the other side of the V have a certain perspective and that we can have a constructive dialogue. That's been lacking as of late in our civic exchange. And I think we can model what a good dialogue about legal matters should look like.
Yeah, well, especially given that you're saying that coming from Washington, D.C., it's all the more important. Anything else that you'd like to say about your blog or your practice or anything else before we wrap up today?
Don't I have to say read, like, and subscribe, or
yeah, I don't even
data files,
it's RopesDataPhiles.com. I haven't even said that yet.
Exactly, with a PH. Indeed. I guess that's it. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. It's been nice to talk about legal blogging and our interesting tangents during the course of this half hour. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, well, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you, and I appreciate your taking the time out of your, I'm sure, busy day to do it. So it's been great. We've been talking again with Edward McNicholas, partner at Ropes & Gray, a co-leader of the data privacy and cybersecurity practice there. And we've been talking about their blog, RopesDataPhiles. And if I have to remind you now, it's PHILES, then you haven't been listening for the last half hour. But thanks a lot, Ed. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks to all of you for watching. We will be back. Well, we won't be back next week, will we? But we'll probably be back in 2 weeks, maybe. I'm not sure what our schedule is. But watch for us. Watch for our next episode coming up sometime soon. Thanks for listening. This is Bob Ambrogi.